So now you're in your guided practice box for today. The very first question you see says Diana watched a 3 and 1/6 hour DVD as shown on the number line. So the number line goes all the way to 3 holes and 1/6. When half the movie had played, Diana fell asleep. How many hours of the movie did Diana watch? You can choose to use the number line and figure out what half of 3 and 1/6 is, or you can choose to continue with the box method. When you think about half, you're thinking about that you need to split that number in half, which sounds like division to you. But when you're multiplying fractions, you're finding a part of a part. So you actually need to multiply. You're going to do the opposite to figure out what half of that time would be, which sounds kind of crazy, but you'll see it works in a second. So if you haven't already, the question wants to know how much of the movie that she watched. So my answer should tell me how much she watched. I know the whole movie is 3 and 1/6 hours, and she watched half. So I'm going to write that as a fraction. She watched 1/2 of her movie this far. Okay, so I'm going to set up my box method again, just like in the teacher model. Okay, I'm going to split it up and down into two pieces because 3 and 1/6 is a whole and a fraction, so that I can write 3 on one side, 1/6 on the other. So it still reads 3 and 1/6, but it's split apart. And off to the side, I'm going to write 1/2. So we are multiplying 1/2 times 3 and 1/6. And it's going to tell us how much of the movie she watched before she fell asleep. This first box, I'm going to do 3 times 1/2. I know how to multiply a fraction times a fraction, but not this. So remember, you have to put a 1 underneath your whole numbers so that it looks like two fractions so that you can multiply straight across. 3 times 1 is 3. 1 times 2 is 2. 3 over 2 is an improper fraction, which means that it is larger than 1. So you need to change it into a mixed number before you go anywhere else to make your life a little bit easier. So that's going to look like 2 being divided into 3. Okay, 2 goes into 3 one time. If I subtract 2, it leaves me with 1 as a remainder. So that turns into 1 and 1/2. Is that my answer? And I circled it. My next box is 1/6 times 1/2. So I have 1/6 times 1/2 written in my box. Since it's two fractions, I know I can multiply straight across. 1 times 1 is 1. 6 times 2 is 12. 1/12 is my answer. Now off to the side, I'm going to write 1 and 1/2 plus 1/12 so that I can add them together to get my total. 12 and 2, so I'm going to think, which one's bigger? 12 is bigger. So it's going to be easier for me to make the smaller number equal 12 by multiplying. So 2 times 6 is 12. So I'm going to do 6 on the top and 6 on the bottom to keep it equal. Okay. The 1 comes over. 1 times 6, 6. 2 times 6, 12. So 1 and 6/12 is equivalent to that. I'm going to bring 1/12 over and put in a 0 as that placeholder so that I don't get confused. 6/12 plus 1/12 is 7/12. 1 plus 0 is 1. So my answer there would be 1 and 7/12 hours. And you'll need to write that in because you do not have any answer choices.